USA presents from Adventureland, Wonders of the Water Worlds. And now your host, Walt Disney.
Angelfish, seahorses, butterfly fish. Just a few of the countless forms of life with which nature populates the vast water world that we call the sea. Of course, there are other water worlds. Up in the mountains, there's the world of the rushing brook and the lake. Out of the lake, the river is born, and the river in turn flows down to join the sea. This is the story of some of the wonders our photographers have found in these water worlds. And it all begins with the sea and the birth of a summer storm.
It is out of the sea that the storm is born. At first, it's only a rising of mists summoned by the sun. Then the vapors gather, compress into clouds, and begin a headlong rush toward the land. Thrusting against the mountain barriers, the clouds boil up into looming thunderheads. Now the airborne mass can sustain its weight no more, and the waters are loosed in the sudden fury of a summer storm. The storm passes, and out of cataclysm, creation. These waters, spilled in violence, now become the lifeblood of the land. All across the upland meadow, the waters collect in runs and rills to begin their long return to the sea. Along the way, they will create many secret worlds filled with wonders, and the first of these is the brook. Like all the water worlds, the brook extends its bounty far beyond its rocky bed. It nurtures the green grass on its banks and patches of wildflowers. These, in turn, become the feeding grounds for a host of animals. This is the pika, a cousin to the rabbit. Wildflowers are the mainstay of his diet, and in spite of his size, he has a remarkable capacity. The pika is a harvester, too, always careful to lay something by against the lean winter months ahead. Where the brook runs white and swift, the water ouzel, or dipper, spends her day in a perpetual shower bath, searching for water bugs and tiny fish. It's enough to give anybody the nervous fidgets trying to keep all these hungry youngsters satisfied. Here's one little fellow that just can't wait. He's out to meet Mother halfway. Well, that took care of him, but now there isn't much left for the stay-at-homes. And so until her youngsters learn to dip for themselves, there'll be many a fishing trip for Mother. Quite often in its journey, the brook will quicken its pace, leaping down the rocky heights in a lacy, rushing waterfall. Then, just a few yards farther on, it changes mood again, becomes a quiet pool. This is the spawning place of the trout. In the sunlit shallows, the small fry are exposed to predators, and few survive. The older, wiser fish have learned that safety lies in darker depths. brook claims the mountain meadow as part of the world it creates. And in this project, it has a helper, the beaver. The waters of the beaver pond, spreading across several acres, bring life and sustenance to many growing things. Most important to the beaver is the aspen grove. Here he finds both food and building materials for his dam. He considers this grove his private property and resents any intrusion. The bobcat is a stranger here, and apparently she's never met a beaver before, or should know that this sluggish animal can be a quick and deadly fighter. It was a brief skirmish, and for the bobcat, a humiliating defeat. But the beaver takes no pride in his victory, only in his work. Right now, it's storing aspen boughs in his winter larder. At the spillway of the beaver dam, the brook regains its more familiar form and races on in sparkling urgency. Then it hesitates again, and quite unexpectedly, creates a crisis for the skunk family. Mother skunk looks like a housewife in her dust cap and has all the same problems, including a problem child. This little fellow just doesn't agree that Mother knows best. He's sure he can find a much better place to cross. But Mother won't put up with any nonsense. It's late. Time the youngsters had their nap. This one, though, was born contrary. He goes limp, drags his feet, anything to make it more difficult. By the time Mother gets him back to the den, she needs a nap more than he does. Not far downstream, the waters of the brook nourish another meadow, and this is the home of the gray fox family. Like all wilderness mothers, the vixen is forever on the run, providing food for her growing pups. The little blind mole reads the vibrations of the earth through its sensitive tail. Now it's caught the danger signal. Against predators, the mole's only defense is to go underground. But here's an odd development. The mole makes a wrong turn and runs out of ground. And so it's the brook that provides a happy ending. It saves a life and frustrates a fox. While the mole is an excellent swimmer, the earth is his element, and as it turns out, he finds the shore just in time, for here come the otters. Although the otters have a wide appetite and will eat most anything, they have an even bigger love for play. For them, joy is the theme of life. And in their water world, everything is a plaything. Their favorite food is crayfish. And now the game is called for lunch. For them, even eating is an outdoor sport. After lunch, a dip. And after the dip, the very best fun of all, a mudslide. Not far below the otter's playground, the brook spreads out to hurry down a wide and rocky bed. Then it gathers itself and leaps headlong in one last display of misty beauty. For now the brook completes its journey, fans out into a web of diminishing ripples, joins the lake, and is a brook no more. Like the brook, the lake is a bountiful water world, giving life and livelihood to a wide variety of plants and animals. In a little cove hidden among the lily pads, the bullfrogs sound off in their springtime serenade. Actually, this is a kind of lady calling contest, in which the loudest bellow is supposed to win the prize. But here's a bully boy who doesn't rely on his vocal powers. He's out to intimidate the competition. Sooner or later, though, somebody's going to call his bluff. And here comes a challenger now. Well, this means trouble. But most likely all the rules and rituals will be observed in keeping with bullfrog tradition. First, you try to stare your rival down. Then an exhibition of leapfrog is in order. But after these preliminaries, there's nothing for it but mortal combat. The object here is to drown your adversary. But since the standard defense is to inflate oneself into an unsinkable balloon, this isn't easy. So the outcome is in the rules too, and it's always the same, a draw. This fellow, though, is still in a bit of a temper, and he's determined to take it out on somebody. In a patch of floating duckweed, he finds a victim, a leopard frog. The little leopard frog backs down in a hurry. He wants no part of a family argument. In the water world of the lake, there is conflict everywhere. And unlike the petty bickering of the bullfrogs, more often it's a matter of life and death, an all-out struggle for survival. Along the flowered shores, one of nature's most relentless killers lies in wait, the least weasel. Now the life of the meadow mouse can be counted in seconds. It rarely happens, but this time the mouse gets away. It's a short reprieve. The mouse and the snake both make a fatal error, for this is the domain of the largemouth bass, and he makes no distinction between the hunted and the hunter. The largemouth bass are the biggest fish in the lake, and they have the biggest appetites. The bass is a threat to everything that swims, including its own young. A cannibal fish, but necessary in maintaining a proper balance in the water world. For 1,000,000 years, the long-nosed gar has prowled the water worlds unchanged in form. This living fossil is a slow and stealthy hunter, feeding largely on minnows. The gar eats the minnows feed on mosquito eggs. The chain of survival continues unbroken. In a few days, the eggs that are left will hatch and eventually become wigglers. Although the wigglers live entirely underwater, they still breathe air, for which they use special hollow tubes. And now it's time for the final change, the emergence into adulthood. The wigglers fight against the surface film, break through. The larval sac splits, and the mosquito, fully formed, begins to appear. Its wings dry out, harden, and soon the new mosquito joins the buzzing swarm above the lake. Of course, there are many kinds of insects here. The dragonfly also lays its eggs beneath the surface. And with this undulating dance, each female will lay several thousand, one at a time. But only a relative few insect eggs and larvae develop into adulthood. Most are quickly snapped up by the sandpipers and plovers that haunt the shoreline. The phalaropes are insect eaters too. They spin tiny whirlpools to bring their food supply to the surface. The blue heron with a more substantial appetite looks for something bigger and finds it right underfoot. For the coots, or mud hens, the lake is a stopover on their migration north. It's also an arena for their mating battles. Here's a male warming up in preparation for combat. Now it's a matter of which coot to conquer. So he finally picks a rival at random, and the battle's on. It doesn't look like much of a fight. As it turns out, though, this silly squabble has a serious outcome. Nature is never frivolous. Only the fit may propagate the kind. The loser is driven off by the flock. Until he proves his superiority, he's condemned to a life of bachelorhood. Other migratory visitors are great flocks of Canada geese and snow geese. Their stay is usually brief, and soon they're in the air again and on their way. Sometimes a mated pair will choose to stay behind and make the lake their summer home. Canada geese mate for life, and these two are just beginning their courtship. Part of their mating ritual is a spectacular display of aerial acrobatics. They choose a little island for their nesting site, and in a few weeks, the goslings hatch. From now on, one parent will always guard the nest while the other patrols the lake on the lookout for trouble. And trouble comes. It's a raccoon, hungry, determined to make a kill. The female's alarm summons the gander. The pummeling of angry wings is finally too much. The raccoon gives up. And with the defeat of their worst enemy, the geese will be left alone now to rear their family in peace. Along the mainland shore, the ducks make their home. The mallard hen hides her nest among the grasses. But nothing is secure from the mink. Although the hen could easily escape by flying, she stays temptingly close, hoping to decoy the mink away from her nest. But he knows the trick and wastes no time on a futile chase when there's an easy meal ashore. But this meal is not for the mink. Here comes the raccoon. The mink wants no fight with this fellow, and a frustrated raccoon finds a meal at last. To satisfy his insatiable appetite, the mink must hunt constantly, sometimes along the shore, but more often in the water, for the lake swarms with many kinds of life, almost all of it his natural prey. When he finds a school of minnows, he's sure of a catch, and even the elusive perch can't escape him for long. It's the mink's instinct to eat his meal in some secluded place on shore. But this little island offers no privacy, and so he moves on. It's just as well, too, for inside this tangled clump of mud and roots, the muskrats make their home. Each day, the growing youngsters must have an outing. Today, as usual, they head for a hidden grassy mound nearby, where there's plenty of sun, plenty to eat, and plenty of room to scratch. The adult muskrats are forever remodeling their lodge. Their building materials are the grasses that grow on the bottom of the lake. Today, though, there's a sidewalk superintendent, a curious bass. The rat has no patience with idlers and drives him away. Like the beaver, the muskrat is a tireless worker, but he lacks the beaver's engineering skill, and a muskrat lodge is pretty much a haphazard affair. Whenever he sees that Mother's going to take over the chores, Father takes time off for lunch. Meanwhile, back at the lodge, Mother, in typical female fashion, improves on Father's work with some special ideas of her own. With nature providing an inexhaustible salad, Father keeps on eating till he can't hold any more, and this takes quite a while. When he finally gets back home, he discovers that Mother's remodeling has completely eliminated the entrance hole. All right, I give up. What did you do with the door? Door? Females. So impractical. Well, nothing to do but go inside and find it coming out. There we are. Just in time, too. Here come the youngsters. After their sojourn in the sun, all they want to do is fall in and fall asleep. As the waters of the storm move down to the sea, the lake is only a stopping place, a way station. And at the farther end, in a shadowed channel between the pines, a river is born. The river is a completely different world of water, but like the brook, it's a growing world, adding to its volume from other streams and other rivers. Soon it's running wide and deep and strong. Winding through a wide and verdant valley, it takes a placid, stately course. In these quiet waters, many fish have come to live, and they in turn bring fishermen from far and near. One of the best is the belted kingfisher. Before the kingfisher's catch is fit to eat, it must be tenderized, and for this she has her own special method. Then it's just a matter of picking out the hungriest looking baby and her handsome brood. Not far downstream, the ospreys, or fishhawks, have their nest. They're raising a family too, and they're faced with the same problems of keeping their hungry youngsters satisfied. Right now, it's Father's turn to provide the meal. First, though, he has to wash his feet. His talons are his fish hooks, and they're useless to him unless he keeps them clean and sharp. Although Father does the work, he gets no chance to share the prize. This meal is for the fledglings, and they'll need a lot more. The river takes leave of the valley now, finds the forest again, plunges down a rocky slope. Here, each spring, its cascading waters form a barrier to schools of salmon, heading upstream for their spawning grounds. The salmon, in turn, attract great numbers of hungry bears. Just out of winter hibernation, they've gathered here for their annual fishing derby. The limit is governed only by the appetite, and fishing is so very good they can even afford to be choosy. Of course, wherever anglers gather, fishing techniques vary. Now, this is the casual approach. You just troll a paw full of hooks and trust a fisherman's luck. In contrast, there's the real go-getter. Then there's the timid type. He wants no part of any fish that fights back. There's also the clown, who spends all his time splashing around, spoiling things for everybody else. Maybe he's not interested in angling, but in these teeming waters, he can't avoid it. The minute he opens his mouth, he's got a fish in it. It's hard to say what this fellow's doing. Maybe he's a self-appointed game warden. Anyway, he seems to have his eye on some latecomers, a mother and her cub. The youngster's too little to do any fishing on his own. He's just along for the ride. All off, end of the line. It's time for Mother to try her luck, although she's not likely to have very much, for by now all the best spots have already been claimed, and the bears jealously guard their territorial rights. Wait a minute. There's a likely place. But here comes the original owner. Mother's in for trouble. Mother loses the battle, but her cub won't go hungry. After all, there's more than one way to pick up a quick lunch. In a few days, the salmon run will be over, and the bears will return to their forest home. But the river flows on through time and space. And now a last green valley leads to journey's end. A quiet ending, for the river simply melts into the lacy surf, and so fulfills its destiny as it joins the sea, greatest of all the water worlds. The Mother Sea, the vast water world that covers nearly 3/4 of our planet. Within this boundless deep, there exists a myriad of wonders beyond all counting. Nor is the sea's prolific might contained by sandy beach or rocky shore. It reaches up into the little tide pools to create and sustain all manner of living things. Barnacles and mussels, crabs and sea urchins, and many forms of microscopic life. And the sea fills the beaches with tiny life forms, food for the shorebirds, like these sanderlings. Offshore, seagulls wheel and hover, for they too take their living from the sea. In contrast to the graceful gull, the pelican looks awkward, almost grotesque. Yet he's a masterpiece of functional design and a fisherman without equal. The birds can only skim the surface of the sea, but in its depths lies the greatest and most abundant of all of nature's kingdoms. Here is the gift of life, multiplied and modified in infinite profusion. Yet where there is life, there must also be death, and so nature creates the predator, although she always arms the prey with some method of defense. Camouflage is a means of self-protection used by many creatures, and the crabs have developed it to a fine art. This little fellow simply hides under a discarded shell. The decorator crab creates an elaborate disguise of seaweed. Another crab uses a live sea squirt or tunicate as a cover-up for his disappearing act in the sand. The bashful crab doesn't even bother with artificial aids. He just hides behind his own claws. This is the sea lily. It looks like a plant, but actually it's an animal. Another example of nature's camouflage. When the sea lily is startled into action, it has all the grace of a practiced ballerina. The flatfish has grown both eyes on the same side of its head. Lying flat on a sandy bottom, he blends perfectly with his surroundings. The tiny seahorse is always found near coral or some form of marine growth. Floating free, he's easily seen and is vulnerable to predators. But whenever danger threatens, he simply becomes another waving frond of seaweed. Another example of camouflage is the pipefish. He looks exactly like a blade of eelgrass. In fact, his disguise is so perfect, he's visible only when he moves. The sculpin's protective coloring is unique. Somehow, when he lies motionless, he manages to look like nothing at all. And of course, that's the whole idea. The nudibranch, another plant-like animal, has no need for camouflage. He's poisonous and holds no appeal for predators. The blenny, brightly colored, must also find some other means of self-preservation, and he does simply by hiding in the sand. Shellfish, like the scallop, rely on their natural armor for protection, and yet no defense is proof against all predators. The starfish has great strength in its tentacles and can easily pry open the scallop's shell. But unlike most shellfish, the scallop has another trick in reserve. In its own strange fashion, it can swim. Yet in spite of all the obstacles nature has arrayed against them, the predators too must survive, and their ways are devious and many. The anemone, an animal that looks like a flower, is actually a lethal trap. Even more deadly is the cuttlefish or squid. In addition to his keen eyesight, he's capable of instant color change, which he uses to deceive his prey. These are expandable color cells. One moment, the squid looks like a rock on a rocky seabed. Then, with a shift of position, another set of cells takes over, and now he's part of a sandy bottom. The toadfish, in the midst of house cleaning, senses another predator is near and quickly hides. And so does the blenny. It's a barracuda on the prowl. From this voracious killer, even the poisonous skate flees in panic. Another of nature's most skillful executioners is the feared and fearsome moray eel. When the eel goes on the hunt, every creature hides. But in his own territory, the eel knows each rock and crevice, and when he chooses a victim, the outcome is never in doubt. The octopus, another prowler of the sea bottom, moves with deceptive slowness. Apparently, she gives her prey every opportunity to get away. But the slowly undulating tentacles seem to mesmerize the blue crab. Now the octopus has the opportunity and takes it. Most dreaded of all the undersea predators is the shark. He spots a school of porpoises, and with the blind instinct of the killer, he attacks. But the porpoises, vastly superior in size and strength, quickly change him from an aggressor into a plaything. When they finally tire of the sport, they wind up the game with a squeeze play and hustle the shark on his way. Frustrated and furious, the shark looks for another victim and finds a lobster. In this underwater world, where death waits at every turning, there seems little place for humor. Yet nature does endow some of her sea dwellers with an irrepressible love of play, and one of these is the sea lion. Since the sea lion is also an accomplished predator, food is seldom a problem. And so when he spots a school of anchovies driven into a ball of panic by his approach, it's a perfect opportunity for fun. Of course, as part of the frolic, the sea lion is not above snatching an occasional fish, and so there are some losses in the ranks. But the school itself survives, and this is the pattern of survival in the sea, where death is but a servant to the living. And so in this vast water world, it is life that is forever triumphant, existing, developing, in countless forms and patterns, through billions of years gone by, and for billions yet to come. Above the teeming deep, a wedge of cormorants skims the surf, and in their tireless flight, they seem to catch the rhythm of the sea. On this planet Earth, all of life everywhere ultimately depends on the generosity of the Mother Sea. On the wings of the winds, she sends her waters across the land to fill the brooks, the lakes, and the rivers. And now, once more, she calls upon the sun to help her in her task. With its final fading light, it summons up a bank of moisture-laden clouds, and thus begins again and ends again the changeless, ever-changing story of nature's many worlds of water.